We need a catchphrase, Keegan.
I don't think we do.
I think we do. I think it's lacking. I think we would have. We would have over 1 billion listeners and over 1 trillion watchers if we just had a catchphrase.
I'm putting my foot down and saying we would have even less listeners and watchers if we got one.
Okay.
Because people would find our catchphrase boring and contrite.
And a terrible way to start a podcast, that's for sure.
Exactly. Who starts with a catchphrase?
Yeah, that makes no sense.
Instead of the name of the podcast.
Speaking of which, great segue. We are the Dumb Comic Book Creators. I am Eric Schwartz, accompanied by...
A piano?
Well, no, an actual person whose name is...
Keegan.
Keegan, yes.
Hi.
Hi. Today we have a special treat for you. Keegan, would you like to introduce our guest?
Yeah, this is an artist and comic colorist named Kassandra Grob Haas. Is that right, Cassie?
Yeah, Haas.
Kassandra Haas Grob. Kassandra Grob Haas. Is it?
Grob Haas.
Grob. Okay. Grob Haas. Is that correct?
Grob Haas. It sounds like a German, electric song. Grob. Grob Haas.
Grob Haas. Grob. Okay.
Super German.
Everyone will remember your name at least now. If we sing it enough times.
Or else, and by the time we're done, I'll be remixed to at least 3 different songs.
I met Cassie in art school, and she is an outstanding illustrator. She did animation in grad school, but she's currently drawing comics, and we just wanted to talk to her about drawing and coloring comics and what that's like. So how's it going, Cassie?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Swell. Keegan's doing fantastic.
Well, ask that again. I gotta close this door. Hold on. Ask again in a second.
Okay.
All right. Let's start over from how are you doing?
Wait, Eric needs a second too.
We're not used to Tuesdays. We don't do Tuesdays. Tuesdays are too early in the week. We need to be exhausted from a full work week before we podcast. Okay, we're gonna start over from how are you doing?
Okay.
Or we could start over from we need a catchphrase.
No, I think we need a fine intro.
Okay. So, how are you doing, Cassie?
I am super great. How are you doing?
Let me do that again. Hold on. 3, 2, 1. How are you doing, Cassie?
Getting progressively worse.
Progressively worse? Why?
This is our 15th try getting that super question. That's why, Keegan.
Okay, yeah. We're very professional here on Dumb Comic Creators.
Yep. We don't ever laugh or make jokes.
You can tell from the title of our podcast. So, how did you get into illustration?
I started drawing really, whenever kids start drawing. But I went to undergrad and got a bachelor's, and that was part of my area of concentration. So I've been drawing on purpose for a while.
Okay.
Almost 10 years.
And tell us about how, what's your normal wheelhouse before you got into comics?
Yeah, so I started off with actually really a lot of printmaking. Drawing and printmaking kind of go hand in hand. So I started with a lot of printmaking, and then I also moved into watercolor, which also is really common for illustrators, I feel. And then I started doing some digital stuff in grad school, and my thesis was an animation project, and then talking with Keegan kind of led me into more of a digital art and digital comic making.
Oh, sorry, that has noise. This is your illustration.
For those that are just listening to the podcast right now, what we have on the screen is just an animated picture of a house.
It's a GIF, yeah?
It's a GIF of a house.
This is from your thesis, isn't it?
Yeah, that is, well, it was part of my preliminary thesis plan.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Did you expect to get into this type of art when you went to grad school, or was there something else in mind?
No, I actually had no idea, or even like, I didn't have any interest in digital art at all. I had tried it with like a bamboo tablet, and I just was not pleased with what I was able to do. So I decided to focus just on like traditional drawing and painting and watercolor. And when I went to grad school, I just started doing a lot of stuff that I had never done before in art making. And I think it's kind of interesting that I eventually segued into that.
Did you have a lot of storytelling in your art before grad school?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if there's anything actually on my Instagram, but my entire bachelor, senior portfolio was retelling Norse myths and like gender swapping all of the protagonists into women.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So you've always kind of followed the story with your art, and maybe going into a more of a traditional storytelling was kind of the next step for you.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of drew me to animation, because I was able to draw and depict multiple moments in a story without just having snapshots, you know, illustrating the story that I was telling. So I suppose comics and animation kind of makes sense for me to have moved into that.
Cool. So now you're post-grad school. What have you been doing?
I am actually getting a teaching license, of course, during COVID.
Yeah, not hard, not easy.
Yeah. So that's what I've been working on, and then I've been working with you on comics and just drawing on my own time as much as I can, so that I don't lose anything from not using.
You said you were working with Keegan, and you're working on your own thing. Are you working on your own comics, or is that your own stuff separate from comics?
Yeah, Keegan and I are working on a project right now called Tiggy, and so I'm drawing and starting coloring for that comic, and I might try another one on my own. We'll see. I've never written a comic before, so that would be a new thing for me to try.
Well, you went to the right source of the dumb comic book creators to
start. We're all about starting from scratch and figuring it out. So, in fact, we have resources on our website about writing your first comic. So,
right, which is perfect for me.
Yeah, check it out. And you have the benefit of being able to draw. So you're miles ahead of us already.
Exactly.
I will say it's super interesting figuring out how to like change the way that I typically would draw, like just a one-off illustration, to show like a sequence.
Yeah,
because
describe the difference if you could.
Yeah, so I mean, before, when I was drawing, for my Norse mythology, for example, if the story, I'd go in and look at the plot of the story and like literally write out a plot line so I could see where the action was and what the main points were, and then I'd pick the most important one and just like represent that point in the story. Or I started trying to represent multiple points of the story in one piece, kind of like ancient, like medieval manuscripts and tapestries. And then when I went into animation, it was kind of like the polar opposite of that. It's showing every single movement through from the beginning to the end.
Right.
And I think comic books are kind of in the middle because you're really just showing like more snapshots to move through the story. It's not just, you know, reading a book that has an illustration in it. It's using the pictures to tell the entire story.
Yeah, and it's so in animation they call those keyframes, right?
Yeah.
Where like you're looking at the most important parts of the animation, and in between you fill it in as best you can.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about comics is you can have that frame by frame still on the page if you want to. You know, you're really in control of the time and space in between the panels.
Yeah, and I find it interesting also, or challenging, I should say, you know, working with a script that I didn't write and then seeing how the writer envisions each panel. And, you know, I have to think to myself, okay, can I represent that? Should I, you know, can I represent that in just one panel? Does it need to be two or more? Or should this moment be its own page? And I've also noticed I'm trying to draw from like a different viewpoint, a different perspective, so that it's not so boring, I guess. Not that illustrations are boring, but a lot of illustrations are typically like you're looking through a window at the scene, and I'm trying in my comics to kind of represent different points of view, just kind of like shots in film or in
shots in a
animation.
film. Yeah. Have you studied any film techniques or
Yeah,
cinematography?
I did in grad school, and my sister has a video picture motion graphics degree, so I've spoke with her about it.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, that's kind of like what I'm trying to incorporate into my drawings now.
So you've worked on 2 projects for me, or
Yeah.
one project I hired you for was Death Maze #1, which is coming out, which just came out last week if you're listening to this, or should be out if you're listening to this in the future. And you've also worked on The Nefarious Mr. Green, coloring both of those comics. And
Yeah.
now you're working on Tiggy, which I wrote, but you're the main colorist and artist. What's the difference between kind of like picking up that project midway through and adding color versus like starting from square one and putting it on the page from the beginning?
Yeah, well, I think it was kind of nice to start off just coloring because it was, I know color theory from grad school and just art school, and it was really easy for me to figure out which colors I wanted to use, a little bit more difficult to figure out the technique I wanted to apply those to the comic, but that really wasn't anything new to me since I've been using the iPad for drawing anyways.
Yeah.
So from there,
And what program do you use?
Oh yeah, Procreate.
Procreate. Okay.
Yeah, which is great. It's only $10. I've made more than $10 in revenue from it, so money well spent.
Yeah.
But I guess when somebody else has made the art already, the drawing, I know from making my own drawings that there's a vision that you have in your head when you draw something, and it changes as you draw it and after it's finished, and to have like another person come in and add their own spin onto that vision that you had when you started drawing it, I think it can be difficult. And it was kind of coming from a place of not wanting to like step on anybody's toes, or, you know, like not wanting to offend anybody by choosing an incorrect color or giving a different mood. So I really took cues from the script on what, you know, you wanted while you were writing the script. So any kind of mood or setting clues or any kind of color mentions, that's, you know, what I started with.
So you're kind of trying to serve what's already come before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
then
what
when
about
I started,
what about starting from scratch? Sorry.
yeah, I mean, well, with Tiggy, it was kind of interesting too because, well, I was kind of seeing a different way that you were writing, and like I'm interested in the subject matter anyway, so I was kind of using what I know and what I've seen about similar content projects, you know, and figuring out how I can do it my own way. And, you know, I don't know. I guess there's just a little bit more freedom because I'm drawing it and I know what I want the finished product to kind of look like, and I know how to get there, I guess.
Right, and you don't have to wait for somebody to finish it. Yeah. Is that your dog?
Yeah, that sure is my dog.
Her best friend.
She is my best friend, but she's kind of a brat. My parents got a puppy and she gets mad at him. He just wants to cuddle.
All right. So what has inspired your artwork? What style? So, for example, this clearly is fairly Greek. I know you said earlier you worked on Norse mythology. Is there like any type of art that like you're inspired from, or do you take a collective approach?
Yeah. Well, sort of my whole, I guess you would call it my style or my aesthetic, whatever you want to label it. But I do look at a lot of older paintings. It used to be a lot of Renaissance paintings because that was what I knew depicted those stories. A lot of illustrations from the early 1900s during like the golden age of illustration. So artists like Arthur Rackham and even some newer ones, Alan Lee. So mainly illustrators and old masters, I guess Renaissance artists. But then I also, when I went to grad school, you know, I was exposed to a lot more stuff and was just looking for more content and, you know, ways that I could change my style and make it my own. So I guess anything really that's like heavily based on line work, that's my like bread and butter. The color is something that I learned, you know, with it because that's what you learn in art school.
Yeah.
And especially if you're working in like a traditional content area like painting or drawing, that's kind of central to it. So it's just my biggest challenge, or the thing I want to do is have my line work stand out and use the color to kind of support that. For me, it's not really about building just color, it's really the line work.
And you've worked on a lot of mythology, I think is what Eric was trying to get to. Is there something that pulls you in about mythology?
Yeah, well, I'm really interested in ancient religion. Well, all religions really, because they're pretty much all ancient, but
Not
mythology, yeah.
And Mormonism, yeah.
Well, I grew up in a Lutheran household, and I just remember like, I was really into Egyptology. So I was really into ancient Egypt when I was a kid. And, you know, a lot of those stories are really similar to the stories from Christianity. And I think that it was just like I was making connections between the stories, and I was interested at like the similarities. And I think it just naturally went on from there, me trying to find more examples of these like similar religious stories, I guess.
And I always liked those. And to me, those were like the first exposure to like superheroes and villains, and like you have these like larger than life figures that are in charge of the story. And
they're really just the superheroes of the ancient world.
Right, like flying around, the Greek gods flying around, and the Egyptian gods with you know, wolf heads and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, all that crazy, that like mysticism and just the magic of it, I suppose.
Yeah.
I guess it also has to do with like the time, you know, I was growing up in the 90s, and like even just the movies that I was watching were mostly like based on stories like that, even if I didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah. So now we're living in an age of we're like, they're gonna look back on 2020 and think that we worship Superman and
Yeah.
Thanos.
They're gonna look back at 2020 and think, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You got me there.
But do you prefer doing the coloring only, or do you like doing the drawing and coloring better? I know you kind of touched on this, but I didn't get
Yeah.
it.
Okay, yeah, so drawing. Drawing is my favorite thing to do. I start there when I'm doing anything. If I'm doing watercolor, if I'm doing painting or animation, I start with the drawing. So that's just the thing that I enjoy doing the most. It's pretty versatile. I think it's kind of the basis of a lot of art making. And there's like plenty of examples of drawing available to me and to anybody really to look at.
I'll tell this
inspiration.
story. I'll tell this story. So I have been trying to finish the Nefarious Mr. Green, the first issue. It's 37 long pages. It's my first comic book, and the line art is done. So I asked Cassie to color the book, and she said yes, and I was so happy. And then I was like, well, we could also work on a comic together. And she said yes, and I was so happy. And then I wrote that comic, which is Tiggy, the Tiggy comic. And immediately the colors for Mr. Green stopped rolling in. And I thought, oh no, she's gone. She's moved on to another project. Turns out it was just the project that we were working on together. And I was like, okay, maybe you don't need to do the colors because you're clearly like inspired by this your project. You know, you're illustrating this other project.
Yeah.
It's probably better that you just do that. So yeah, if that says anything about how much you like illustrating.
Yeah, so there's your answer. Yes, drawing.
Yeah, she will abandon the coloring project in order
Not
to
if I
illustrate.
can farm that out to somebody else, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Very true.
But I will say it is cool. I did enjoy doing. I finished the color for page 1 of Tiggy, and you know I did my first version of the color and absolutely hated it, and ended up changing the drawing, which I think is something that's hard to have. It's harder to have happen if you have a separate artist drawing the comic and a separate colorist coloring it. It might be harder for that collaboration to happen, especially if you're not in direct contact with somebody, or if you're working across the globe from somebody. That kind of like collaboration it's just harder. It's not as organic, I guess. So it's easier for me to make those changes if I'm the one drawing and coloring.
It's definitely harder to make that change if you don't have a working relationship with the artists that you're working with. Like if it's just a freelancer and you hired them on Fiverr, for example, that update is going to cost another page rate, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're working long-term on an issue with someone and it's kind of collaboration, then it's a little easier to email and say, hey, this panel is not working. Look at the color. It needs to change a little bit. Can you fix that? And they might do it at that point because they want to get published too, you know. So
right.
Did your changing of that first page affect the rest of the pages, or were you able to do it in such a way that it was a standalone correction?
Yeah. Well, I sketched like 3 pages, and then I inked all 3 pages, and I sent those to Keegan. I was like, here, this is what I have. I'm going to start coloring. And then he's like, yeah, let's, just work on Tiggy. And so I started coloring that first page. And after I sent that to Keegan, and I think I sent all 3 of those drawings pretty close together. Yeah. And he was like, oh, by the way, page 3, like, this is a real place that we're talking about in the comic. Here are pictures of it, and like, make it look like the real place, because that's what it's based on. And so that was helpful too, because I could not only have like a real life object to look at that I could get plenty of images of. It was also like a link for me of what Keegan was envisioning while he was drawing it, and the things that he was bringing to the script. And so then my 3rd page changed as well. I think the 2nd page stayed the same. I haven't touched that one yet.
So far, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the second one I think was a lot more detailed anyways than page 1 and page 3. Because it was all about the stories that I was already familiar with. So I knew that kind of mythology, and I was able to take exactly what I knew and put that into the drawing, and I think that kind of helped it be more detailed.
Cool. Yeah. I love it. I like it a lot. And then when you did change page 1, it was another time that we referenced a real life thing and brought it into this mythology, which was pretty cool. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I was redrawing page 1, and we were chatting, and I was like, we were talking about, I just knew that it wasn't right, and I knew that it just kind of seemed like dead space on the page, and I wasn't sure what needed to happen. Like, I knew the viewpoint was wrong, and
I think in the script it says Zeus looks off the mountain at the earth, which is very abstract.
Right. And I was like, okay. And so I drew one way that I was thinking about it, and that wasn't working. And Keegan was like, oh, by the way, I was thinking of the space jump.
The Red Bull, the Red Bull space jump. Yeah.
When I was writing this.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. It's this insane thing where this guy from Red Bull gets in a capsule, and it's taken up by a space balloon that like drops off satellites outside the atmosphere. So it takes him all the way up, and then he jumps out and sets the record for like the longest free fall, and he makes it all the way back down. It's pretty cool. It was like 2 years ago, I think.
I think I know what you're talking about. Like we described a preacher about that.
Yeah, it was just amazing.
I was able to find images, so that was, I don't know. I think that pushed it, and then I just changed, like I just moved stuff. I flipped stuff on the page. I didn't really redraw the other side very much, but that was super helpful, because once I knew what he was thinking, then I was like, okay, I know how to do that the way that I want to do it. And then once I had it drawn and started the color, it really kind of started coming together. Yeah.
So and so I learned something from that as a writer, putting in the script like keywords that the artist can Google is a real thing for me now, because I'll look something up that I'm referencing in my head when I'm typing out the script. And before I would just describe the object without really thinking about like, oh, the artist can kind of figure this out from my description. But now I'm kind of just throwing in keywords like Red Bull space jump. It looks like the Red Bull space jump. And then Cassie can go on and look that image up and like try and figure out what the hell I'm talking about from that real life object. So that's really helpful if you can give the artist some kind of reference point to draw it, or if you're thinking of something specific or some specific angle.
Yeah, I mean, we've been using Google to communicate for the script and, the files for the pages. And I think even you could go so far as like, if there's a specific image that you're really like, this is it, this is exactly what my vision is, you could even drop an image in there, and it would be super easy for an artist to then be like, I know exactly what he's thinking of because I can see it too.
Yeah, and I've worked on a nonfiction scripts for somebody. One of my Fiverr gigs is transcribing screenplays or short stories to comic book script. So I worked on some nonfiction scripts, and that writer actually has a reference sheet with his like actual family memorabilia pictures, which I thought was really interesting. And then that will end up in the comic book. Those pictures will end up. I actually wrote those pictures into the comic book. I was like, use the actual photo here, So.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Especially for nonfiction, that's like a really good idea. Yeah. Well, Cassie, thanks for coming on and talking a little bit about your process. And
do you have any shameless plugs that you wish to put on right now?
Yeah, check out Tiggy Comic. And
on Instagram,
yeah, on
right?
Instagram. And then you can find my Instagram too, just Kassandra Grob Art. My Facebook is the same thing right now, Kassandra Grob Art.
Are you on TikTok?
I am on TikTok. What is my TikTok?
Or should I say, are you sharing your information with the Chinese government?
Yes, I'm
You
a
hate
huge fan of
America?
them.
No, not that
Yes,
far.
absolutely. So I don't even know what my TikTok is right now. Probably just Cassie Grob or Kassandra Grob. I'll have to figure that out.
Well, let's not plug that then. Let's go back and plug Tiggy Comic on Instagram. Follow it.
Yeah, Tiggy Comic on Instagram.
She's got some great images up there to look at. And you're going to update that with more time-lapse videos?
Yeah, Procreate's got a really great feature where it records every mark made on the in the program, in the canvas that you're working on, and it creates a time lapse. So yeah, I'm gonna download one of those, a couple of those, and like chop it up into a couple seconds to post.
We actually have 34 followers on that. We just started it last week.
I know. I was thinking that was pretty crazy myself.
It says something about your art, though. I think people are following because your art is really good.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I mean, that's all there is. There's nothing really about the story on there right now. I didn't even give away.
No, you didn't.
Hardly anything. I just started drawing Tiggy herself today.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Yep.
Did you find a picture of the nuclear? Never mind. I'll ask you later. So let's say goodbye. And this has been a great, eye-opening, jaw-dropping learning experience for me. How about you, Eric?
I have learned so many a thing and have grown as a person.
Great.
It was an emotional journey.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Yep.
Okay, so we're recording again.
And welcome back. We just had a great interview. I personally learned a lot, at least 3 new things.
We had an interview, it was like 3 days ago.
Well, according to the power of editing, those people won't know that.
So you're saying our listeners don't have to wait 3 days to hear us right now?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's the power of editing.
God, I'm dumb. I didn't know that.
You're the one that edits these videos, dude.
Yeah, but I usually wait 3 days if there's I wait whatever that gap is.
Okay. So, we hope you enjoyed the first half 3 days ago. And for those of you that are
if you want the full experience, you can pause this podcast,
wait
3 days, and then you'll be in the mindset we're in right now.
Yeah. So. Or
if you want to feel like a time traveler, just continue listening.
Mm-hmm. So, I still remember the things I learned. I'm just not going to share them.
Okay, me too, because I don't remember that far back.
Neither do
but
I.
Hopefully we said what we learned 3 days ago.
I'm sure we did. I'm sure it's going to sound fantastic. I'm going to pause really quickly so we can record those 3 things right now. Wow, I'm glad I said those 3 days ago.
Wait, are you saying you want me to edit in what you said?
Okay, I don't care.
That was a long pause for radio.
I know.
Hopefully they're watching the video.
Hopefully. For those of you that aren't watching, I just held up my fingers in 3, 2, 1 with a long pause.
They turned it off. They turned it off during that.
Well, I did that knowing that Keegan, who's stuck editing our videos, would have a field day with that.
Yes, I would. Okay. Why don't we continue on and stop wasting these people's time?
I don't know. Okay. So, where am I at in my project? I have told you I have finished the script about a year ahead of schedule. I still need to go back through and edit it because it's still lacking major details. It's not a product that I would feel comfortable even sending to the editor to look at before even sending it to the comic book artist.
Okay.
But I still, at the same time, need to look ahead and start looking and see if I can find an artist who kind of suits my art style.
Okay. You had me worried that we would have nothing to talk about this whole podcast.
Well,
because you set that up as I don't have a script, but then you finished it with I will have a script, and so I'm feeling better because today we're gonna look at comic book artists.
You have seen my script. It just doesn't have that much details on it. It's where I'll say like what a person says, but I won't have like the visual elements of it there. That's the big thing I need to go back through and say like this is what I have in my mind for the person doing it, and just describe that in words.
Yeah, but you have a script. You have the whole story down, which I think so you can start looking for artists and maybe even reach out to a couple of them and see if they're available.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I've got Reddit/r/comic book collabs open. And this is a subreddit where creators help creators make comics. So you can find collaborators. It's a good place for feedback and advice. If Eric wanted somebody to help edit his script, you could go on there and perhaps like find somebody who would be willing to read it besides me, and other stuff. So I've been on here for about a year and I like it a lot. I don't participate a lot like actively, but I read almost everything that's posted. All right, so this is the subreddit, and I've already searched the Reddit page for hire. So when people are looking for jobs, they put this tag for hire in their post, and that's how you can quickly filter out the posts to find a comic book artist. So for your script, what kind of artist are you thinking that you're interested in finding?
I'm more interested in something slightly cartoony, but not so over the top that it looks like Picasso.
Okay, so you're not going for realism, really? Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah,
to a certain extent, no. I think I could do better if. I don't know. It's kind of. I unfortunately right now have the problem. I have the Supreme Court problem, which is I know it when I see it when it comes to terms of things I like. So I'm not gonna say no to anything just yet, unless I see it and I'm like, oh God, what is that hideous thing? How dare
okay, great. So what I did was I hired 3 or 4 people to draw 1 or 2 pages, and then I kind of like thought about how each interpretation like impacted the story I was trying to tell. So a more realistic one was changing the humor a bit from the cartoony one that I kind of ended up going with. On the flip side, a very exaggerated, realistic looking art can in turn make your story like even more farcical, you know? If it seems real, but it's like a little bit exaggerated still, like a little cartoony. All right, so let's look at some artists that have posted on this Reddit and just talk about their art styles and maybe compared to your story. So this is the first post. It's by Renan Shoddy. It says description on, so they sometimes post one picture and it's.
This one looks like it was an entire comic book page.
Yeah, it says actually several pages, I think, that he's more like covers, it looks to me.
Yeah.
So this is very realistic, shaded and black and white. Let's see, and there's, oh, so if he doesn't have any details about his rates or anything, you can scroll down usually and find a link to their full portfolio. And his portfolio is on deviantart.com, where a lot of artists' portfolios are. The only thing with DeviantArt is I don't like to contact people directly on DeviantArt because I don't really have a presence on DeviantArt. So I prefer to use email or Reddit because I'm more on Reddit, you know?
For the viewer, that's whatever your personal preference is.
So yeah, you can see that his art style is highly realistic.
Yeah, and it's very detailed. There's not a lot left to like just not necessarily the imagination, but just left purposely vague.
Yeah,
So I'm like, so there's a picture that we just were looking at. Here, I'll even discuss this one for the people too. They show a picture of a person with their eyes open and closed, and you can see like every detail of her face. Like even though it's close to that, you can see like some eyelashes and hairs going
yeah.
down. You can see that each individual eyebrow was drawn. It was stuff like that.
They're like portraits. They look like photographs, you know? So what do you think about this in terms of your story?
I think it would work really well in my story because, for the most part, my story doesn't have anything that needs to be super over exaggerated or anything like that. I think it would fit well. I'm
Okay.
just also curious about his rate though too because
Right, obviously. This is highly detailed art and it would take a long time to create, so his rate is probably pretty
really
high, would
I
be my
see.
guess. Yeah, look at the perspective on
Yeah,
this.
like there's for those again just listening, there's just a view of like a person's like of a city from like an apartment or whatever, and it's just a very detailed like each individual window's drawn.
There's even
The
birds.
There's birds. There's a background like wooded area. You can see like the posters that go up on the buildings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's people in the background of the panels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is a very professional. I would say this is a very professional artist, nearly professional.
Yeah.
How do I get out of this?
Uh,
Not like that.
no, not like that.
Okay, hold on. It's not letting me out.
Click just DeviantArt on the top left, or click home. I mean.
Here, I'll just go back. Okay, so let's see. He doesn't really have rates in his post or on his comment with the link to his portfolio. And I don't see any rates on his portfolio either. So that means you have to go back into Reddit and try and see if he already posted his rates, or else just kind of assume he might be out of your price range.
And then right there it says page rates. My price range for page is $120 via PayPal or $110 for Pioneer. So for me to do that would cost, because right now my book's around 22 pages for $120, just doing our basic math. That is really expensive.
Bring up my calculator. It's $2,640.
Yeah.
For issue 1. And this goes back to whether or not you want your story to be a one-off story or issues, you know. Because
and currently mine is I plan mine not being a one-off, unfortunately. So
right. So if it's not a one-off, then maybe you want to go with the lower rate so that you can produce more in the future. But if it's a one-off book, then maybe going at a higher rate because it ends and you won't, you know, and you'll have a fixed budget for your book. That could be a good idea too. Also, something to keep in mind is some of these artists do like 1 page a month or 1 or 2 pages a month, which is a much more like easy to pay for, especially if you have a job, like a full-time job or you're working. But you should note that like you shouldn't pay these artists up front ever.
Do they ever ask to be paid up front?
So what I've read is there are scam artists on these pages that will copy other people's art and then kind of go after writers who don't know much about the process and like get them to pay up front and then disappear. So you just have to be careful. You have to get references, maybe if you're paying a lot. But a good payment a good payment method is pay per page. which is what I do. The artist creates the page, I pay each time. Every time he creates a page, I pay that day, basically. And I pay on PayPal. If you're working on a one-off project and they're going to be sinking a lot of time into it, or even for an issue like 22 pages, they're going to sink a lot of time into it, but maybe you want a faster turnaround. It's not unusual to pay 50% upfront and 50% at the end, which I've done. I did that for Death Maze number 4 or 5. I think 5, Death Maze number 5. I paid 50%. I paid for the first page, and then I paid for the last page at the end, because it was only 2 pages. But I didn't mind doing 50% because it was only 2 pages, and that was not going to be out a lot of money. But B, the artist might need to feed themselves that day, and like I feel bad for people.
Also, they're like having to pay for, like, if there's drawing something by hand and scanning it in.
Supplies.
They need to be able to pay for supplies, stuff like that.
Wireless, yeah. If you're doing issue, I don't mind paying per page. I think that's easier for me. And you can even tell the artist like 4 pages a month or 6 pages a month maximum to keep that cost low per month.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can say as many as you can do. And if you are coming at this with like a lower budget or you can't pay a lot, and you've like kind of negotiated down, it can be fine to like expect that if the artist gets busy with other projects, your project might fall down the list of priorities for them, which has happened to me with the Nefarious Mr. Green. And I've not had a problem with that because I know I'm not paying a large page rate for my comic. It's taken a long time. It's more of like a slow burning project, and that's okay with me. And that allows the artist to take projects at a higher page rate and also work on my project, which is a project he actually likes working on, and he's not stuck working on something he doesn't like, Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So 120, is that high for you?
That sounds high for me, yeah.
Okay, but would you agree that the art is worth that price?
I mean, yeah. If you have something that this wasn't my first comic. Let's say like I was very well known right at this point, and I'm coming up with a new comic book series type that I was going to do. I could guarantee it's going to sell well. This would be the art I would like because it's a very well done art. It's looks fantastic, and it's a very professionally done artist or art page.
Okay, so so that's kind of the higher end. Let's look at another artist here. Here's a manga webtoon artist. Oh, this looks pretty detailed too. Mm-hmm. So they have art on Instagram instead of DeviantArt, and you can see. So my big problem with this artist, and this is Hodge _art of on Instagram, Heather Hodges. My problem with this for sequential art is that there are no examples of sequential art, which I don't always trust because sequential art takes a knowledge of cinematography as well as drawing. So I think it adds a level of difficulty to the project. And so when you see people that don't necessarily have a sequential art portfolio, it's a little bit difficult for me to approach them. But that having been said, what do you think of her art? It's really good.
Her art is very good. It's like her seal images, like our portraits, are very, very nice. But again, as you kind of hit the nail on the or hit the hammer on the nail.
Nail on the head.
Nail on the head, whatever. It's all portraits. It's nothing like sequential movement or action based. So it's very, very good. So like, whereas this artist we're looking at right now.
So I pulled up another one. Mm-hmm. Marco Mark Oliver Studio 39. Yeah, so this, go ahead, sorry.
Just like his art, like he's got comic book pages, so we can see that he knows how to put stuff in order. He knows just how to do stuff too, and he's got his level of detail isn't that of the first two, but still is very high and very good. Like this thing, I'd be very, very interested in.
Yeah, and another thing to note on this is that the backgrounds here are not as detailed and in any of these panels. So unlike the previous 120 page rates, I would expect these pages to be a little lower because he's putting together pages and the backgrounds aren't as detailed. There's still some detail here, for sure. I mean, you have to expect some detail when you're hiring an artist, you know?
Yeah. I don't expect stick figures.
Yeah.
I could do stick figures. It just wouldn't be any good.
It might be good. You never know.
Yeah.
So let's see. He's turned off comments, so there's no comments. So his page rate is 65 for pencil and ink.
So that's actually something I'd be willing to go with because it's not.
Yeah, so 1,400 for your whole project if you worked with him. And that's for pencil and ink. So if you wanted color, it would be, I would say probably another $30 a page, possibly.
Yeah.
But your comic might do well in black and white.
I think my comic would do fine in black and white.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you think of his art with that having been said?
I think his art's good. It's realistic. A lot of his art seems to be based on God of War, like Kratos. You keep on scrolling down. Like,
well, that might just be the project he worked on.
They actually say it's the project he worked on, but like that's clearly Kratos or whatever. But it looks good. It's got like some of his pictures have more detail, but some of his pictures I think have not so much detail that it doesn't distract me.
Yeah.
So this picture of Kratos and his son is a solid page. It's just like there's good, decent, major things to look at. Trees, branches.
Yeah. Again, the background here, this tree is basically a stick figure tree. I mean, it's in the background. It's got no detail, but it doesn't need detail. It's like a camera lens where the background's blurry. That the foreground is nice and detailed, and that's all you sometimes need for comic books.
Yeah.
One thing I want to point out when you're looking at art is like the proportions, and this is something that's difficult to spot as a non-artist, but like her neck on this image of there's a fairy sitting on a skull. Again, it's all very well done, but I think there's like something weird about her neck in this. And you know, and just like the proportions of her shoulders and are pretty good. I mean, everything's pretty good, but you should like be aware and then maybe check his other pages for this weird, like a weird thing, because if they're bad at proportions, they might not get better at proportions, you know. It seems like he's pretty good at proportions.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, here's another example. Her leg is very large compared to the rest of her body. It's exaggerated. Anyway, that's just something to consider when you're looking at his work. Okay, let's do another artist here. So this is user Mark OTNY, Market NY. And what do you think? They've got one page on here.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it. It's not terrible. It's just like this is like by far the least detailed of everything. Like there's I look at the very top and the person doesn't have a mouth on one of the faces, and I'm just trying to get past that.
Yeah.
But
well, it might, you know, it's very stylized. I'm wondering if his mouth is being blurred out by the honk of the horn. If it's kind of a creative choice there.
It could be. But like the backgrounds are also similar, that they're more simplified, not like overly detailed. There
Yeah.
is like some stick figure cars, some basic buildings.
I'd say that the ink style on this is very heavy.
Yeah.
It's very noir looking.
Yes. There's very little color except for 2 of the 5.
Yeah.
6. Yeah, the 5.
Let's see if they have a portfolio here. Oh, but see, their rates are 40 for a fully finished, colored, and lettered page.
So that's always something to keep in mind. Is like that's a great price for me because I like cheap.
Then your whole project would be $880.
Yeah. So
and that's with text and color, which is unusual.
Yeah. This person, I'm surprised how cheap they are actually, because I thought their artwork was good enough that they didn't need to do that.
And so let's look at their portfolio, just explore a little bit more. Would you say that these pages, like, how are you reacting to these pages?
The pages are similar to the other stuff. He seems to have he seems to be very one stylized things. And
well, I'll say like most artists keep to a similar style.
Yeah. This art kind of reminds me of a less detailed version of the original Walking Dead.
Okay.
So the original Walking Dead, the artist that he hired initially was different than the artist that he's used since. And
yeah,
it was black and white as it always is, but it was much more like pencil like scratch marks, and that kind of describes me to this one.
Yeah, I like.
I like so his drawing though. So for those that can't see it, he's showing a gunfight, and he drew the word "blam" on it in 2 different ways, right on top of each other, and that looks really, really good.
Yeah, yeah. And so this is actually a team of artists. This Marco, Lucas Marco, .blogspot.com. That's how you can find the work. So full disclosure here, this is an artist team that I used for Death Maze #5, and they did a great job, I thought.
Yeah,
made like one of the most unique versions of Death Maze, I have to say.
I'm going through looking at this, and I'm really liking the art.
Yeah, so yeah, and I would recommend them. They were really nice to work with. And this is the artist team that I paid half up front and half at the end. So and they're based in Poland. And they again, they did a great job. It was nice to work with them. They have a unique style. I think one thing you have to watch out for is their colors tend to be kind of simplified, which you noticed before. And so if you need something specifically colored, it's good to let them know, because clearly they can do color, but part of their style is making simplified color, which brings out this noir feel to their work.
Which I think would work well in my art because
definitely.
My story, although not officially noir, definitely has some noir.
It could be noir, it could be. It could be that you're going for more of a Superman ripoff or feeling, or I mean, you're kind of satirizing superheroes a little bit too. So you might want to go for a very traditional superhero look, or you might want to stylize and make it like a different feeling. Because if you went with this, then your whole book would kind of look like this.
I'm not totally against them either, so.
Okay, well, so we're definitely adding them to your list.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's, Market NY. Okay, so that's good. These are colors, letters. Here's another noir artist. Let's just take a look at these. So we're looking at user Nico Ku92 on Reddit, and he's got some noir images here. What do you think of these?
I think he's got some pretty good stuff. Again, civilized background, which I'm all pro. And he's got some good details, but not like to the detail of the first artist. But each character looks distinct and different, which I like.
Okay, yeah. So I'll say that yes, the character work is great in this. Even the background work is great. The problem for me, and this might just be the print or the JPEG quality, but these lines are like the panel frame lines are like pixelated, and they look really bad. You know.
I don't think that was him though. I think that's probably.
But like, so are these. Like, he's used kind of a standard brush in Photoshop. Like, it looks like a pencil brush. I personally, I just don't like. I don't like that. It does add like a gritty component to it, but it also kind of looks lazy to me. So I don't know. It would be up to you if you wanted to use him, but me personally, I don't think I would. I like that he's used kind of this manga style action lines, which are kind of neat.
I also like the fact that like he kind of, so it's 4 panels, but the panels are not in the traditional just perfectly fitting each other. They kind of, some points they overlap a little bit. They're not straight up and down.
So that's called dynamic paneling, or dynamic pages, where the page is not a grid format. It has energy. There's overlapping, and so that adds dynamic. That's why they call it dynamic pages. So when you put out your ad for an artist, or if you approach one of these artists, you should put that you want dynamic pages, because that's something that you're drawn to. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? You also might want to add where that could happen in your script, if you want, because I've seen other writers add that to their script. There are comic book artists who will just do that naturally. So it's something to consider. So let's see if he has a rate on here.
He has a spot for his full portfolio.
I don't see any rates.
So I probably do look at his full portfolio spot and see there.
Yeah, you could look at his portfolio, or you might need to reach out to him directly.
Yeah, this one looks like we wanted to reach out to him directly.
Yeah, which isn't bad, but sometimes if you do that, it ends up being a rate that you're not interested in. Mm-hmm. But he's based in Italy. They have a really good cartoon or a comic school there, illustration school in Italy. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
All the art looks like him, actually. I find it interesting. There's a portrait of them up there.
Yeah, it's true. It does look like him. So maybe you don't want him to be in your comic. All right, let's see. Let's do one more on here, and then let's switch over to Fiverr and just, okay? So another manga artist, just to look. So what do you think of this?
This is bare bones minimum. Like, I really expect this to be like $30, not knowing anything.
Okay.
But this person at least can show me that they are dynamic, that they do an entire illustration. The character works pretty good. The hand kind of blends in with the hair weirdly in the bottom left.
On the left here? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll say it's black and white, and this is called screen tone. Mm-hmm. When it's shaded like that in manga, it's called screen tone. And I think that the character design is really, really strong in this. Yeah. You can see, and it's very realistic. And their bodies still have lots of depth, even though even though it's, kind of flat.
I
and
really
there's no
like
background.
the hand. So it's kind of funny because so the hand I setting I don't like in the bottom left, but literally the frame above it, I like her hands grabbing his shirt. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things.
Okay, so this is manga. It's pretty simple. There's no background. Let's see what the rate is, if we can find it. Here it is. The rate is 35 to 60, depending on the complexity. So that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it was 35. So that's 770 for your 22-page issue.
Okay, so the three people I'd like is I'd probably commission this person, the 50% person, and possibly some other people as well.
Okay, so this is Mart Inc. MARTINK, just for your records. Okay, so let's switch over to Fiverr. Fiverr is the way I started hiring comic book artists. I was very intimidated by Reddit because you never know what you're going to get. It's kind of like Craigslist to me. Like it's a little sketchy. No pun intended. And so Fiverr is a nice marketplace where you can look at. You just type in comic art, for example, and there's a bunch of gigs, and but not, you might get things here that are not comic book pages. So I like to put in comic page on Fiverr, and then you'll get people who are making sequential art. Okay. So then the next thing you want to do is you want to kind of look at their page rates, starting at 50, 45, 10. So let's choose this one that's 10.
That one's just inking your comics page, so I'm not sure if it's even.
This one?
The $10 one is what I meant.
This is the $10 one.
Oh, this is?
All right, so when you're on the search page, you'll see that each of these is starting at a certain amount.
Yeah.
But it's a little misleading. So I'm going to choose this one that's starting at $10 because, hey, $10, that sounds great.
That's such a fantastic deal. How could I ever say no?
So you, on their page, it says what they'll do. They'll hand draw an amazing comic page strip or single panel. And so the $10 is for just one panel. So that's not very good because you have 22 pages. So their standard is a strip, which is probably not great. And so their full price is $50 for a page, which is better than some of the rates that we looked at on Reddit, right? So then it has like a little description about the gig. Another thing you can look at is how many orders are in the queue. That is basically how busy this artist is right now, at least on Fiverr. Or if they're even using Fiverr, which based on his reviews, 277 reviews, says that he probably is pretty active on here. And he's a level 2 seller, which means that he's done a lot of business on Fiverr. And so then you can just look at his art. This is very cartoony, I'd say.
Yeah. This looks good, but it's not what I'm aiming for.
Nah. What about this? So he clearly has several different styles.
Yeah. This style is more what I'm aiming for, but it's still, I don't know if it's 100% because.
So one thing I'll say about Fiverr artists is this is where you might really start to see issues with proportions.
Yeah, I'm looking at this person. This is very odd proportions.
So in panel 1 on here, there's a woman in the foreground, and then there's 2 people in the background. One of them is half the size of this window, and the other one is he's bigger than the woman in the foreground, I'd say. He might be a giant inside that window. You just have to watch out for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Fiverr is a great marketplace. you'll pay exactly what the gig says you'll pay. So that is nice. You're kind of going through a company, so you can complain to somebody, if it goes wrong or they don't do the work. But you do have to kind of just really look at the art and decide if it's someone that you're interested in or not. This might be too cartoony.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to another one. So this one has one order in the queue, 101 projects that they've worked on. So let's see.
That is a very odd face. These faces are weird.
The hands. I like the hands on this.
Hands are good. The arm right before the hands also kind of weird though too.
They're like very masculine hands, I think.
Yeah.
I think the proportions of this are really, I mean, his shoulder is bigger than his head on this.
Yeah, I'm about to say, that just literally look weird.
So proportions, you have to keep in mind proportions. And it's not very detailed, even though there is some detail. It's just not.
No, this is less detailed than a lot of the stuff we did before.
And again, the face, this is like literally, I don't know. It's an emotion, I think, but I wouldn't go with this artist. So
I don't plan on it. I don't like this artist that much.
So let's see if we can find one that looks promising. Are there any on here that you want?
I will create awesome comic pages for you, that guy.
This one? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, 3 orders in the queue.
Mm-hmm. 41 orders.
This is 5 panels, but you can't use it for commercial use, so you have to. So it's 55 per page. So the first.
Wait a minute, can't use it for commercial use. What does that mean?
That means that if you hired him at this basic per page rate, $25 per page, you wouldn't be able to sell the work that he made. So sometimes people will just for fun, like make a little drawing for their work refrigerator or something. And so you could hire him for that. But if you wanted to sell a comic book, you would have to go at his $55 rate.
Okay.
And his premium rate seems to be for a highly detailed page with a background or a cover. So, and it looks like it's a color page, so that's good too. $70 per color page is a pretty good rate.
Yeah.
So the first 3 pictures on Fiverr are the artist has uploaded. So these are pages he made outside of Fiverr.
Like that, I don't think it's really good. This one right here.
Yeah, it's detailed.
It's detailed. It's well done, and the minimal color really makes a big difference.
Yeah, his art style says that he has like a artistic vision, like a sense of like his own artistic skill.
Yeah. I
think the faces are pretty good.
I think all of it's done really well.
Yeah. But then you might get to something that he did on Fiverr and it completely changes. So this one was actually ordered on Fiverr, and I think this looks completely different than the pages that we just looked at.
Yeah, it does. It's not the same style. And
at all.
I don't know. I think the quality is less too, which is upsetting to say the least. No.
Well, these were commissioned. These were commissioned as one single panels, right? There are still lots of details here. I don't know. This is pretty good, actually.
Neither do I.
So, yeah, I don't know. So you need to watch out for what they're actually producing on Fiverr, because even though they might upload like the world's best portfolio,
if their art sucks.
if they're not producing at this level for Fiverr clients, then you're screwed, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, oops, comment page. Oh, one other thing that you can look at when you're searching on Fiverr, if you're interested in Fiverr artists, this is sorting by relevance, but you can sort by newest arrivals or best selling. So for Death Maze number 6, I went on here and I looked at the newest arrivals. And I found somebody who's doing an awesome job on that, you know. So I would just, you know, you can always kind of like see if anyone new is on here, because what happens is if you're new on Fiverr, you do tend to like offer a lower rate so that you can get more gigs and kind of level up into that level 1 seller, at which point people trust you as a Fiverr seller. And so, you know, if you're willing to kind of like put yourself out there and work with one of these artists, you might get a better rate. Or you might find that the proportions are bad, or, you know, this isn't actually too bad.
No, I mean, and like the one proportion that people might complain about is purposely done that way. So it looks actually very well done.
Yeah, and I like this art style.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is the basic is a storyboard at $30. The standard is a black and white, toned and inked, which means it's pretty much a finished black and white page for $50. And a color is $100. But that's with the lettering, I think, too. And so, you know, this artist, EM, and their name is ERIELEJO on Fiverr. They've got 4 reviews, and, you know, it's just not a lot to go on, right? Just from this. So you'd have to like really kind of feel them out if you're going to pay $50 for something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the art's very good.
The art's very good, so.
Yeah, so you just have to be really, you know, like kind of more communicative with them. Like, can you draw a sketch of the page so I can look at it, you know, before they start rendering? Mm-hmm. Rendering is like putting in details. So most comic artists will sketch out a page for you before you hire them, you know, just as a courtesy.
That's a nice thing to do.
So that's kind of our review of how to find a comic book artist once your script is ready. So you've seen a couple of people. Are going to send them maybe a page this week?
Possibly. I'll probably do that on Friday.
Okay.
Next week's episode.
Next week's episode, you're going to send out a page. Next week, I'm going to talk about coloring a comic book page yourself, which will be fun. And that's what I've been doing for Death Maze number 2. And it has been amazing. You want to do a comic book review here?
Yes.
Have you been reading anything?
I have been reading something. I have read The Coldest City by Anthony Johnson and illustrated by Sam Hartz.
Oh, cool.
Most people know this as Atomic Blonde, a movie starring Charlize Theron. Basically it was the premise for that, and that's what it is. So we'll talk about, I guess, the plot. Plot is that it's taking place just before the fall of the Berlin Wall, like a couple weeks beforehand at most. And one of the spies that was in Germany for England was killed.
Okay.
And the big problem is he had something called the spyglass, which contained the list every single name of every single spy for both the Soviets, the Germans, the Americans, every single person. And when he was killed, they thought it would be found on him, but it wasn't found on him. So she's sent to not only A, retrieve the body and make sure no one looks too closely at the body because he's not supposed to be there, and B, somehow get the spyglass, the list of all the names, because as great as it would be for them to be able to get the KGB thing, their biggest fear actually is that it will fall into the hand, or that it will fall in the hands of the enemy, which is worse for them and also the Americans too, because they're allied with America in that spot.
Sounds like a good plot.
Yeah. So
How's
the
the art?
plots, the art is actually I was not a huge fan of. It's not shaded so well, but they did that on purpose because it's kind of noir. So like a lot of times, like faces will just you can't see their face, purposely done that because like they're hiding in the shadows. You can't see that well, so it's always purposely very dark. So a lot of it, like the backgrounds and stuff, are almost non-existent because they'll just purely put it all in black or whatever. So, for example, stuff like that.
So very simplistic.
So even the part. So what I do like though too is like when they're purposely trying to show that they're trying to be hiding, they purposely just do it as a silhouette.
Okay. So it's stylized.
Yeah.
They show up as white on black instead of showing up as black on white when they're hiding.
Yes.
Okay.
But like even like when like they're just so this takes place. The majority of the story takes place after she's come back from her mission when she's talking to her superior. What happens? Even that is purposely shaded in such a way that you can't see that much because again they're all spies. So it was done on purpose. And it represents that too, and so.
Okay. How's the coloring?
There is no color. It's black and white.
There's no color. Okay.
No color whatsoever. It's all black and white. There's some shading on the basics part, like for example, there's some shading here.
Okay.
They do a lot of that because like she'll spend time in the sewers, so they'll shade the part that you can see her in.
Okay. What do you think? How does the color, like the black and white, add to the story?
So the color impacts the story in that it purposely, they try to keep things dark as possible because people are trying to remain anonymous. Like the exception being, I'm going to point to these two characters. So like this character is a restaurant owner. And so like when you meet him, like he kind of purposely stays bright because he represents something not part of what she's used to. Like he just was somebody who asked her out because she was drinking at a bar.
Okay.
He liked her.
So he's not in the shadows. Yeah.
He's not in the shadows. So because he represents that aspect, he's not like they always show him in bright light. Stuff like that. So that works out really well.
So and the lettering?
Lettering for the most part is handwritten, or not even handwritten. I guess it's typed, but it's basic typed. It doesn't really change dynamically depending on what's happening. But it kind of fits it.
It's matter of fact, sort of like a spy.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are like some special ones. So, for example, when she was next to the restaurant owner right there, you can see them go in the bedroom. She kicks the door, and it's a slam. So they kind of that.
Every now and then.
But yeah, for the most part, it's kind of like it's the whole point. It's like each person's not so unique. They're kind of cookie cutter. Everything tends to stay about the same.
What about the je ne sais quoi?
The je ne sais quoi is French. That's a French term, by the way.
I know it's French.
It's French, just so you know.
I know. I'm appropriating it.
Okay. Well, je ne sais quoi is French.
Okay.
I was not a huge fan of this one, actually. I read it because my favorite movie reviewers who love Atomic Blonde always go on about how great Atomic Blonde is. I've never seen Atomic Blonde, so I figured I'll just go right to the beginning of the source, which is the coldest city, which Atomic Blonde is based on. And I was not a big fan of this. Like I finished it because I was like, all right, I'll just finish it. But I wasn't that intrigued. I didn't think the plot, the twists were that M. Night Shyamalan greatness of what a twist.
Okay, so on a scale between the inside of a sweaty cowboy hat and the top of Mount Kilimanjaro with all your best friends. What do you give this?
Clean cowboy boots. No one wants them, but they're still there. So this is
okay.
below average.
It's below average, yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations to Anthony Johnson for being able to get this turned into a movie, but I'm surprised it worked out as well as it did.
I didn't finish Atomic Blonde, so that I might agree with you if I read that book.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Cool. Keegan, did you read anything?
I did. I read Why, The Last Man.
Oh, that's a fantastic book series.
This is just volume 1 or book 1.
I own all 10, so.
And it's produced by Vertigo.
Mm-hmm.
And the artist is Pia Guerra, the penciler. Brian K. Vaughan wrote it. Josue Marzan is the inker. Pamela Rambo, the colorist. Clem Robbins, the letterer. And the cover is by J.G. Jones. So that's quite a lot of people that worked on this. So, getting into the story, it's about the last man on Earth. All the men die of a weird virus all at once. And the women are trying to figure out how to run the world. And then something about clones in this. And and he has a monkey who's also a man, which is unusual because literally all the men, even in animal species, die. And they die at the moment of the birth of a clone, I think, right?
Yeah.
You read this, right?
Yeah. So for those that don't know, they all males died. So after the first successful clone ever, all males died at once.
Yeah, and it's not clear if it's related or not. Could have just been a coincidence. So
you'll have to read further issues to be sure.
Yeah, this guy has a some kind of medallion too from a magic shop that might have kept him alive. We don't know. Or I think it was at the same moment he opened that medallion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So was it the box? Was it the clone? Were they related? Is his sister alive? Is his girlfriend alive? We don't know. Was his girlfriend a girl? Because that also comes up in this book. I'm going to move on to the art, if that's okay. The art is pretty standard comic book fare. Realistic looking people. I think that, the characters are well defined. It didn't really stand out, the art. There's some cool pages with lots of people, But everything it just kind of looks like a movie. It's not, I wouldn't say the art was like stylized in any way. But the character designs are cool. The color, again, is just it's plain. It's kind of plain. It's kind of just color. It's not stylized. I didn't really recognize it for the color either. Each color is in the proper color. Does that make sense?
Yes. How's the background and how's the inking?
Well, I would say that the inking is well done. I mean, there's a lot of scenes at night, which I will give it credit for, because those can be pretty bad sometimes in comics. And I'm guessing that the inker did quite a good job on this frame, for example, adding shadows and to the light source of this nighttime scene.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's just really solid. I think the je ne sais quoi of this.
It's a French term.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. I think it's the writing for this particular book. I really think this could have been drawn or colored by anyone. But what really stands out is the story, just there being no men on the planet. It's kind of this dystopian feeling. the characters are really well defined and have strong intent, strong wants and needs, which and it's a page turner. You know, you wanna finish this book. It's well done. The villains of this story, like they cut off one of their boobs, like the ancient Amazons, yeah. So that was kind of a cool twist too. Yeah. So overall, I would say the Je ne sais quoi, like the thing that you can't put it down for is definitely the writing.
All right. On a scale of cutting off your own boobs with sharpened ice to being the last man on Earth and it being like Porno World, what should you go with?
Which one is the bad one?
Cutting off your own boobs with ice. No, like.
Are you sure? Because Porno World feels like it would be exhausting. It would be like a living hell.
Okay, fine.
I mean, there's no emotions in porn too. Like
in 3D porn with actual characters that aren't just like, oh, I'm your plumber. I'm here to fix you, to tighten you up or whatever.
You mean 3D, like three-dimensional characters?
Yes.
Not like VR.
Not like
okay.
VR. Yeah.
So just a highly emotionally evolved society where you're the only man and everyone
like the
still
porn,
has.
Like so, in an 80-minute porn video, the first 75 minutes is you getting to know the person. Like it's all sped up because like obviously this takes place over maybe days, months, or years, and you get to know the person very well. And then all of a sudden, like, hey, let's go fuck. You're like, yeah, let's go fuck. And he goes bow, you go bow, wow.
Why don't you just call it like a romance movie?
Fine. Last Man on Earth romance movie is the high-ranking one.
Okay. I'm just saying because porn is a little callous. It's not.
I don't know. I only watch porn for its plot, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, you're missing the end. You fall asleep before the end.
Yeah, I'm like, what? Why are they taking their clothes off? This makes no sense. Go talk to her again.
Okay. Well, I would have to give this a strong, The Notebook.
Oh, that's a really high rating.
It is.
Yeah, Notebook's solid romantic film.
Very solid.
Won Best Kiss.
It did. In the
MTV.
rain.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's plenty of other men in that story. So.
Mm-hmm. There's even bad men in that story.
Only because I think that the art and colors could have been a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Could have been better, you know?
Yeah.
It almost looks like an old 90s comic. It's like, it could be an old 90s comic. When did this come out? Well, 2003, so it kind of, it's right on the edge there where they were still doing bare bones art just to crank it out. I mean, don't get me wrong, the art is really good. You know, you would want to hire this artist, but I think today modern comics are kind of trying to stylize more to fit the story. So, but yeah, the writing's outstanding.
That's good to hear. I liked it.
Cool. Well, this has been a good episode.
Yeah, fantastic episode.
Taking place over the course of 4 days.
Yeah, it took us many days to finish this project.
It sure did.
Sure did. My name is Eric Schwartz, and
what?
What's your name?
Oh, I'm Keegan Shiner. Why don't you just make that easy on me?
I said and. I said my name is Eric Schwartz, and that was obviously clearly left for you to pick it up.
No, but let me give you an example. My name is Keegan Shiner, and I just won the lottery. You see? Could be anything after that and.
But I didn't say anything afterwards. I left it open for you to pick it up.
My name is Keegan Shiner, and I have a book in my hand.
That's not a pause. Dramatic pause is, my name is Eric Schwartz, and
my name is Keegan Shiner, and you're listening to Dumb Comic Creators.
We need a catchphrase.
We do, and if you want to support us, support our podcast, please become a patron on our Patreon. It's patreon.com/dumbcomiccreators. We're totally up for answering any of your questions. Email us at dumbcomiccreators@gmail.com.
If you have any comics you want us to read and review, please send them our way.
Yep, we're any skill level. If you just made a zine, we'll even talk about that. We'd love to. And finally, on Instagram, Dumb Comic Creators, Facebook, Dumb Comic Creators, any other place, Dumb Comic Creators. If you go in the bathroom, think about our show, Dumb Comic Creators.
All right. Anything else? Still need catchphrase.
We do need a catchphrase. All right.
Yep. All right.
Well, talk to you later.
All right. Bye.